Greetings, this is the Grumpy Old Slan, and today we're going to be looking at second level Illusionist spells in Unearthed Arcana. So as we can see from the list, there are 16 second level spells, of which 4 are new, and these are the ones we're going to be looking at. The first spell is Alter Self. It has a duration of 3 to 12 rounds plus 2 rounds per level, a casting time of 2 segments, and the area of effect is the Illusionist. When this spell is cast, the Illusionist is able to alter himself or herself in a manner similar to a Change Self spell. However, Alter Self enables the caster to effect a quasi-real change, so that size can be altered by 50% of actual. If the form selected has wings, the Illusionist can actually fly, but only at 1/4 the rate of speed of a true creature of that type, and with the loss of 2 maneuverability classes to a minimum of E. If the form has gills, he can breathe underwater as long as the spell lasts. Using Alter Self to change into a larger creature does not permit additional attacks or damage unless the Illusionist is accustomed to this form. Potentially quite a powerful spell. Could obviously be used in a variety of role-playing and social situations, but also in exploration. If there's some sort of obstacle to cross, and the Illusionist can alter themselves to have wings and slowly fly over it, that could be quite useful. The spell doesn't seem to have any limitations in terms of whether the altered self is going to be strictly humanoid or not. I would tend to want to limit it to some sort of humanoid form. The one critique I have of this spell description is the final sentence. How do you determine if an illusionist is accustomed to a given form? At what point do they become accustomed to it? This is something the DM will need to think about before introducing the spell. But overall, I like this spell. The DM just needs to clearly state what is and what is not possible, and how an illusionist is accustomed to a form needs to be determined. Next is Fascinate. It has a range of 3 inches, a casting time of 2 segments, a special duration, and the area of effect is 1 creature. By means of this spell, the illusionist attempts to captivate the subject creature's attention and gain its love, friendship, and/or obedience. The spell creates an illusion around the spellcaster so that he or she becomes, in the eye of the subject, a trusted and/or desired companion. Unless a saving throw versus spell is successful, the subject will follow the illusionist wherever he or she goes, if possible without undue risk to life and safety. If the illusionist is able to converse with the fascinated creature, the subject will obey requests from the spellcaster as long as the roll of 3d6 per request does not exceed the comeliness of the illusionist. Requests which are obviously against the better interests of the creature add +1 to the dice roll, and the more hazardous and unreasonable of these requests will add from +2 to +6 to the dice roll. The spell is shattered whenever comeliness is exceeded, and the subject will certainly be filled with rage and hate. Creatures of normal sort with animal intelligence will remain fascinated for only short periods of time, 1 to 4 days. But if the illusionist has been careful to treat the subject well, attend to its needs, and feed it, there is a 2% chance per point of comeliness of the illusionist that the subject will willingly choose to befriend and follow him or her. Otherwise, the creature will attack if it was not cared for, or leave if it was cared for, when the spell wears off. Non-intelligent creatures are not subject to a Fascinate spell, cf. Charm Person. This spell clearly includes an attempt to integrate the 7th character ability of Comeliness to the game, which I think is misplaced in this case. I think Charisma is much more relevant here than Comeliness. This spell has some interesting uses. For the clever player, though it has quite a few limitations, it is also, I think, to a certain extent, very open-ended, perhaps a little bit too much. since the 3d6 roll to determine if the character remains fascinated is only when the illusionist makes a request of the fascinated creature. Obviously, with the initial casting, there's a saving throw, but otherwise, if you manage to fascinate a creature and you give it a very vague and long-lasting order, and you never again interfere with it, presumably this will keep going forever. I think this spell is not quite as well thought out as many of the others and would require quite a bit of tweaking to properly work in most campaigns. It is, however, an interesting possibility to provide a form of charm person for Illusionist. The next spell is Ultravision. It has a casting time of 2 segments, a duration of 6 turns plus 1 turn per level, and will affect 1 creature. Except as noted above, this spell is essentially the same as the 4th level magic user spell of the same name. Note additionally that creatures with high intelligence might be able to detect invisible creatures by the use of Ultravision, either natural or magically bestowed. The required material components for the Illusionist version of this spell is a powered essence of carrots. Quite a powerful spell, particularly since it is only 2nd level, and for magic users it is a 4th level spell. This is something that in the 2nd edition of D&D would become normalized, since the pool of spells available to all magic users, including illusionists, would become the same. Here it really shows a propensity for providing the illusionist with some more powerful spells at a lower level to make up for some of the limitations they're under. I find the note about being able to detect invisible creatures to be interesting. Most of my experience with Ultravision in D&D comes from the Vault of the Drow module, wherein the Drow have some Ultravision, and I don't recall Drows being able to detect invisible creatures because they have Ultravision. That would be something I'd want to go and look at again, and perhaps also look in the monster manual for creatures that have Ultravision, see if there's any note of that, because that might be introducing a new element to this ability. The next spell is Whispering Wind. It has a special range and a special duration. The casting time is 2 segments, and the area of effect is a 2-foot radius. By means of this spell, the illusionist is able to either send a message or cause some desired sound effect. The whispering wind can be prepared so as to travel as many tens of feet underground or miles above ground as the spellcaster has levels of experience. Thus, a 3rd level illusionist could send the spell wafting 30 foot in a dungeon or as far as 3 miles outdoors. The whispering wind will be as gentle and unnoticed as a zephyr until it reaches the desired objective of the spellcaster. It then delivers its whisper-quiet message or other sound for a duration of up to 2 segments. The Dwemer then fades and vanishes, as it will do if the subject is beyond range or more than 2 hours of time have elapsed, or it is magically dispelled. The illusionist can prepare the spell to bear a message of up to 12 words, cause the spell to deliver other sounds for 12 seconds, or merely have the whispering wind seem to be a faint stirring of the air which has a susurrant sound. He or she can likewise cause the whispering wind to move as slowly as 1 inch per round, or as quickly as 20 inches, or any rate in between. When the spell reaches its objective, it swirls and remains for the full 2 segments, regardless of its speed otherwise. As with the Magic Mouth spell, no spell may be cast through the Whispering Wind. An alternative to the Message spell, which has a much larger range if outside, I do find the difference in distance between indoors and outdoors to be quite severe. I would tend to provide a larger distance if whatever environment the illusionist is in has natural air currents. But if it's a small enclosed space with a lot of closed doors and there's no real air current happening, then yes, 10 foot per level seems more reasonable. I think this is something the DM will need to decide upon. There's also this odd 2-hour limit. It's not clear what this 2-hour limit is about. Does the Whispering Wind travel the prescribed distance and then hang out until the subject is there. This is not clear. And again, this is another spell where the DM will need to figure this out before introducing it in their campaign. Let's just do a quick recap. Alter Self. I quite like this spell. Quite a lot of potential uses for a clever player, and not just in combat or social situations, but also in exploration. Fascinate, I don't like as much. I find there's too much vagueness in the description, and a lot of work needs to be done by the DM. Also, I'm not very fond of incorporating the comeliness stat into it, since it's not a very standard one, and I don't know of any group that actually has used it ever. If somebody has, let me know. Ultravision, quite a powerful spell, especially when you consider it's 4th level for magic users. What I do find interesting is illusionists don't seem to have access to infravision. Finally, the Whispering Wind, which is an interesting alternative to the magic user's message spell, but does have problems in its description and again requires a lot of thought on the part of the DM. I think that's the overall theme for the 2nd level illusionist spells in Unearthed Arcana, is that the DM needs to think about introducing them and clarify some of their limitations and some of the things that can be done with them. This has been the Grumpy Old Slan, looking at 2nd level illusionist spells in Unearthed Arcana, and I'll see you next time.